Hey everybody, welcome to What Drives Us episode 373 for July 1st, 2020. Welcome to the age of the pandemic. Yay. I hope everyone out there is safe and healthy. We have an amazingly big show for you tonight with lots of news. Look at this panel, huge panel. So I'm going to make the introductions very brief and we're going to get into it so that we can get to the good parts. My co-host, Mr. Tony Schaefer.
Hey, happy Canada Day to all my Canadian friends, both of you. And yes, I do have a toonie somewhere, and I don't remember where, but
the glow-in-the-dark toonie.
Yes, cool. I do have I have a toonie. Compliments of Mark. John, have you sent me any?
Nice.
Just saying.
As a token of your friendship.
I did send. Never mind.
Okay. All right. So, hi everyone.
Very nice, Andy. In order of the heat index today, our friend in Northern California, Georgia McKenzie.
Rabbit, folks. Welcome to the first day of July, or as I like to call it, March 307.
I like that. I like that. Next up, our friend in Canada, one of two friends, I should say, wearing the patriotic sweater, Mr. Mark Coughlin.
Hello, everybody. Got the Canadian sweater on. Hockey sweater in July. Of course. When else would you wear a hockey sweater? When it's 92 degrees outside. But in my basement, it's a lot colder. I wouldn't be able to hack this. But welcome to the show, and happy Canada Day to all of you.
Absolutely. And speaking of Canada Day, we like to think of him as the President of Canada, Mr. John B.
Hi, everyone. Happy Canada Day. Sorry, I'm wearing green.
That's okay. You're allowed.
Some green in Canada.
Yeah, it's green. And speaking of green, our friend in the Mid-Atlantic region, Mr. Casey Green.
Hey, that's me. So I've just spent the weekend putting hundreds of kilowatt hours of battery juice on the road. So it was a fun trip. We did a deep dive into the latest Tesla software update, and I gave a preview before I left, and then right now I've got the results on my editing deck.
Look for that soon on Casey Green's channel. And finally, last but not least, our friend in the upper left corner of America, Mr. Patrick Connor.
Hello, and I will join in on the Happy Canada Day. And if you're listening to this a few days later, Happy 4th of July, or as I like to call it, Independence Day. So let's break our dependence on fossil fuels. Thanks.
Here.
Very smooth. I like that.
Nice way to work the message in there, Patrick. That's
always
on brand.
Yeah.
Always on topic, sir. Always on topic. Well, speaking of on topic, I just want to drop a little reminder, a little teaser. Coming up in the next couple of days, in fact, tomorrow, I will be in a place called Thermal, California at the BMW Performance Center, checking out what they have to offer there, hopefully learning a little bit, driving a little bit, maybe wrecking a couple of tires. I have my hopes. And of course, I'm going to share all of that with you. So look for that, maybe some phone updates tomorrow and some longer form, nicer quality video coming in the following days. Like I said, we got a big show tonight, so I want to get right to it. Georgia has the first story, and you know what? I'm sorry. I have to. I love her. So we tend to subtitle the news things as we submit them, and Georgia's was so appropriate this time. Quote, "These morons will kill us all." Georgia, tell us who you are.
Tell me how you feel. So, I'd like to thank American Airlines for giving not one flying fuck about their passengers. Basically, that's essentially what they are doing.
America Airlines.
America Airlines. They should just drop that and just America. But they are ending, and they are one of the only big carriers to do so, the social distancing policy. So yes, you too can pay about $500 to $600 for a domestic flight to be jammed in there like a sardine next to Bobby McVector and walk out with your own gift of COVID-19 for your friends and family. what are they thinking? They were already notable for poor social distancing policies. Now they want to fill the planes to capacity. And for the record, I'm in California, and Governor Big Daddy Newsom just smacked a whole lot of counties down and said, you're all back in timeout, and shut down the reopening of stuff in their areas because they were so bad at it. And we're at like 6,000 more infected just yesterday. That's 6,000 infected in one day.
Wow.
And I am so thankful I live in a tiny county where we only have 346 so far. But so American Airlines deciding to do this, what can we say? We all know what this is about. And we're going to
money.
Yeah, it's all money. It's all to make sure that they get as much out of every flight as possible. And I knew it was going to happen because much like all the other businesses that are insisting to open, including universities that are now, USC says that they're going to have a presence on campus in the fall. And LA County is, of course, another majestic county that is now shut down. So we'll see how that works out. It's because to run without the amount of physical bodies in the space, it's costing the executives money. And we're going to have to make a decision. Which do we prefer? Do we like to live without an intubation equipment in our lungs, right down our throat? Or do we just want to maybe calm down just a little bit, wear our masks, practice proper social distancing, which is not what you think it is. If you need to, get yourself a measuring tape so you can measure out 6 feet. And that's the minimum. That's not the maximum. Or, I don't know what to say anymore. At this rate, I firmly want to remind everybody that the whole plot of all the Resident Evil movies was that the Umbrella Corporation was trying to breed a mindless, no need for pay zombie slave workforce. And it got a little out of hand. And I'm kind of thinking, hey, this is kind of good.
Yeah, you don't even have to go to fiction, and you can just go to history. I was looking at the Spanish flu 100 years ago, and the second wave was the deadliest. And it was when people ignored social distancing, didn't wear their masks, didn't listen to the experts, and reopened too soon. And I'm glad that 100 years later, we've learned our lesson. Oh, wait.
No, the thing is we're getting rid of that stupid second wave and going straight for the gold on the first wave. Congratulations, America.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if we could infect every human in the United States in the first wave? Then there'll be no second wave.
Yeah,
oh my God, that's brilliant.
Not make that mistake again. We're not going to have a second wave because we are still in the first wave.
Yeah.
Sorry, Canada. And if
Rest
you
of
get
the world.
a seriously large package with breathing holes from California.
Yeah, set it outside for 2 weeks.
I'm just
drop
saying,
food in every once in a while.
I'm just asking nice.
Yeah.
Put it in a negative pressure room. All right. What, you don't have that in your house?
Yeah.
That's brutal.
I've got to wonder, some of these businesses, airlines, for example, knowing that it's a 2-week incubation period for COVID-19, are they simply playing more or less playing the stats and saying there will be no way to prove that you actually got it on the plane?
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah,
it
is
possible.
No, you know what? I tell you right now what they're betting on. Somewhere in one of those bills was passed some weird little thing that says you can't sue.
Yeah, McConnell's been pushing for that since the end of the first stimulus. Is the liability protections.
Of course,
tort reform. Yeah.
And, and the NFL, NFL is actually trying to have attendance at games for the fall. They are making plans. Right now, I haven't heard a confirmation that it is happening, but the NFL is saying that they hope to have fans at games. But the big caveat, you got to sign that COVID-19 liability waiver when you buy your ticket.
Mm-hmm.
There will be lots of people, based on the Trump rally in Tulsa, there'll be a ton of people that will sign that waiver.
100% positive for every test.
I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to football season because my attendance at football games is not going to change this year from it was the year before or any time before that.
Yeah, you
No
get
change in my viewing habit.
You get a free COVID test and a free body bag. Enjoy.
Oh no, you got to pay
Laid
for the
over
body
the
bag.
seat,
The Ivanka Trump branded body bags cost extra.
It's,
There's our
It's
show
only-
title.
it's
already.
only
Body
the
bag
it's only
included.
the Bud Light body bags that come with the tickets. Yeah.
Dying in style, man. We're just dying in style.
I don't know.
Okay, I'm writing it down. I'm
Expensive,
writing it down. I'm already depressed. Can we talk about something else? Can we
Brand
go
body
on?
bag. Yep.
Would anyone be offended? Because I don't want to kill myself this early into the show. I was hoping to make it at least 3/4 of the way through the show.
At least we didn't end the show with that one.
Yeah.
I know. I was hoping we get the hard part over with first.
Mhm.
Okay, so here's Mark with a really uplifting story.
Sadly, no.
Oh,
But we've talked about the Toyota coming vehicle, the SUV, the RAV4 Prime, which is a plug-in vehicle that's going to give you a little bit over 40 miles of range with an 18.1 kilowatt battery. And we all in this show said that this car is going to sell gangbusters. We all believe that it is prime for the market, that people will pick it up. It's got the Toyota name, it's got a battery, it's got a fairly good amount of range that people can use in an everyday setting, and they'll be electric almost all the time, except for long trips, which it's got the Toyota engine to back that up. So this was a winner. It is going to be a winner. And Toyota decided that they're not going to make very many of them at all.
Damn it.
They're only going to be distributing 300 a month in Japan. So that has been wiped out already. They stopped the reservations 3 weeks in. They're sold out. There's not going to be any more available for the coming year. And in the U.S., 5,000 total for the entire U.S. Tony, you're going to have to get in line tonight if you want to get that vehicle because there are not going to be many of them available at all, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And we don't
Yeah.
know, is this a
You wanna put
battery
a positive-
problem? Is this a lack of foresight? Is this Toyota saying, well, let's just wait another year and maybe the price of batteries will go down again? We really don't know what the politics are here, but man, they've missed the ball on this one because this vehicle was going to sell gangbusters, and because of production, it will not in this coming year.
If you want to put a positive spin on it, you can say Toyota has made a plug-in vehicle and they are sold out.
Sold out, baby.
The less batteries you order, the higher your price will be per unit. So, I mean, it only makes sense to order more batteries.
Right.
So, how many RAV4 EVs of both generations made it out, John?
Oh Jesus!
Pop quiz.
I don't think it was 5,000.
I actually do not have the numbers on hand. I don't know.
Wow, this is the first time I've ever seen John stumped. Nice,
I wasn't
nice
trying to
done,
either.
Casey.
Casey gets a prize of something. I don't know what.
It's the no prize.
Yeah.
But basically, I'm wondering. I'm curious how that number stacks up against the other two. Was it?
Well, keep in mind the second gen was a Tesla. We're using Tesla batteries, right? So
With the same intent, just get it out there and then stop them.
But still, there was not a negative anticipation review of the RAV4 Prime to be
They're all
found,
good.
except when Pat was calling me a well-conditioned consumer or whatever.
So I just found the number 1,500 of the first gen,
Mhm.
and
2,600.
I'll try to find
2,600 of the second.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
2600.
did they really think that was going to be it for the
They just
Prime?
double it
I
every
mean,
time.
Come on, let's be
So
real.
yeah, so a total of about 4,000.
Well, keep
so this will
in
exceed
mind that this 5,000 is for half a year. I mean, not again if you want to put a positive spin on it. So that's 10,000 a year annual,
Yeah.
right? If you as opposed to 20,000, which is their intended production target.
But they
sales.
stopped taking orders. Even in 2003, when the 2004 Prius was anticipated, they took
No, but
orders.
this is in Japan.
I was on
They
a
stopped.
Japan stopped taking
Yeah.
orders.
Yeah, not the U.S.
But the U.S. ordered
still.
just a block. Just here's 5,000. That's all you get.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I got on a 14-month waiting list for my 2004 Prius, and they were still taking orders. I mean, why do you stop taking orders? You create a backlog. You show demand.
Even if
Because
they
they
got
want you,
retroactive,
they maybe
Maybe
want you to
things
buy
work.
another car.
that's exactly what
Things
it
work
is.
differently in Japan, I guess.
I don't know. It just feels like they're not really committed to this car. That's
Yeah.
like, to me, it's a good thing that they sold out of their orders, but unless you can point to a real supply issue, like they can't get a particular component for the battery, so they can't match production. This
Or it's
doesn't
just
feel
their
Yeah, let's see. People
manufacturer.
want more of our product. But let's not make more. No.
Right. It's yeah, like Mark said, no matter how you look at it, it just does not seem to make sense.
So
Yeah.
what will this do for
Unless-
maintenance and repairs? If they don't have as many to make, doesn't that mean there's gonna be less parts?
Well, hopefully,
As an owner.
Hopefully, eventually, by year 2 or year 3, demand will wane and there'll be enough parts around. In terms of manufacturing.
I mean,
maybe initially
Toyota-
you crash it like in the first half year. Yeah, you may be SOL.
yeah.
That doesn't sound good.
You break it going out of the driveway, you're probably going to be screwed. But
Yes.
let's be realistic. Toyota does not have a problem producing things.
Right.
This
They
is
must be
not-
worried about it, and they want to limit some
So
in case
they're
there's problems.
Clearly, they're not making enough money on it. They just are doing it for a halo. Somebody's
Testing
got
the
a bug up
waters.
their ass.
Yeah, waiting for some battery breakthrough.
Yeah,
Well-
that's been their excuse for years.
Hmm.
That's growing long in the tooth.
Yeah, solid state's coming in
Yeah.
2025, and we're not doing much until then. So this goes along with their strategy of not doing much until then.
Yeah.
Only 5 more years to go.
Oh, that just doesn't sound good at all.
No,
I mean, yeah.
Well, I'm sorry.
I hope it's
they've
an
had half a
oversight.
year.
I hope it's an oversight, and next year they can come out with more. But this is depressing news out of the gate.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Well, speaking of more electric vehicles, John has a story about, oddly enough, California. Why do I have to go to Canada to learn about California?
I don't know.
Ah,
News travels.
news travels.
Uh,
John, take it away.
Yeah, so California is typically the place that leads for clean emission, zero emission mandates, and so after passing the one for passenger vehicles, now their next step or the next target is commercial vehicles, which I guess kind of makes sense. I mean, it would be nice to finally start broadening our efforts to transportation, especially now where we're at the point where we can start tackling bigger vehicles, heavier vehicles like the commercial vehicles, and trying to move them towards a cleaner, greener fleet. So the California mandate is that for commercial trucks, and it looks like it includes the 18-wheelers, they will have to start, or I guess the fleets will have to start electrifying. No, I think it's actually pure electric. It actually has to be pure electric.
Zero emission.
Zero emissions. Thank you.
Yeah.
By 2024, and hopefully transition the entire fleet by 2045. So the idea is that starting in 2030, so about 6 years in, they'll have about 100,000 zero emission trucks, and then the next target will be 300,000 by 2035, and of course all of it by 2045. So I guess that's basically their target, and they're hoping to save, I guess what's this? The National Resources Defense Council said that this mandate will lead to about $8.9 million in health savings between 2020 and 2040. So that's just not having to breathe in all that pollutants from diesel emissions that these trucks produce, and we know, most of our goods, I guess, come by trucks, right? It's just the cheapest option. Once they arrive at the port in Los Angeles, they get trucked up to the rest of the country. So at least I guess within California, say to start with in terms of range, I'm thinking range. At least that will help clean up the local emissions.
Yeah,
So,
from the story. I'm sorry, John. From the story, there's one really strong paragraph that explains why this should be a priority and why it is. Quote from Stephen Edelstein's Green Car Report story: trucks are the largest single source of vehicular air pollution, CARB said in a press release Thursday. They account for 70% of the pollution and 80% of diesel soot, despite only numbering 2 million of the roughly 30 million vehicles registered in California. They go on to say, and I'm not quoting that paragraph, but they go on to say a lot of these also adversely and disproportionately affect minority and low-income communities because they're the ones that tend to be clustered around ports, rail yards, distribution centers, freight corridors. So it not only they not only have an outsized footprint in pollution, they disproportionately affect some of our most sensitive communities the worst. So this is a great move.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that point up.
Yeah. 70 to 80%. I mean, that's like, oh my God, that is huge. I'm surprised the health savings is only like 9 million over 20 years.
No, I mean, only 20 years and 1,000 premature deaths, but that can be avoided.
They're not just the deaths, so is also the chronic conditions like asthma and high blood pressure, heart conditions.
Right.
I mean,
Do you
let's
guys
be
remember
blunt here. The comorbidities of those conditions are what's killing largely minority populations most from COVID. Right. So this reduction is very good news, and it's part of the perceiving the concept of environmental justice as a social justice issue.
Very true.
You guys,
very much.
You remember a story we did? I think it was last year or maybe the year before. I think it was Mark's story, if I remember correctly, about the electric, the dock trucks that they had, you know, instead of just having. Say what?
Yeah. In Long Beach, you're talking about?
Yep.
That sounds right.
Yeah. It was in Long Beach. Yeah. I mean, that's a great first step of moving things around in that enclosed area without having to just sit there and burn diesel the whole time. You know, now we're taking it to the next step and, you know, broaden it out as they're moving around.
Yeah. Right, and the ship's running on shore power too, instead of sitting there burning their diesel.
Their diesel engines.
Yeah.
Their fuel oil.
Super good. Super
some
important.
European centers have electric delivery vans. So, you know, I don't know if this mandate covers those smaller commercial vehicles.
It started with Class 2A up to Class 8, and the smaller delivery vehicles, I think, are targeted first. And that makes sense, because those are the ones driving around in the populated areas the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they're parked overnight usually, right? Yeah. Okay.
Right, so they can charge up, right?
Yeah.
And the fleet managers are going to love this. Yeah, you pay a little more up front, but your maintenance goes down, your fuel costs become stable, especially if you already have a solar array at your facility.
Mm-hmm.
It's
and
a no-brainer.
For the automakers, okay, so this establishes a market. California is a huge place. A lot of vehicles sold there. There's going to be a market for these because it's mandated. And if you're early and you're selling these vehicles and then some competitors not, they're going to have to buy CARB credits from you. So you get to sell more vehicles and you get money from your competition. If you're a smart business manager, you're going to be jumping on this.
Well, Elon's already on his way.
Well, there's him, but not just him. Like we've seen eight different prototypes in production ready, whether or not they're actually in production.
Yeah, if you make some sort of Sprinter van or whatever, start making an electric version of it and start road testing it now, figure out all the kinks, be ready by this 2024 date when it starts so you can be high volume by 2030.
Mm-hmm. Ford claims they're working on electric transit. You know, there's a whole bunch of things that they could do.
The change van, that one's pretty cool. It's a big ass van.
Nissan has the ENV.
Yeah. Well, they had to bring it here first, but yeah.
Yeah. Toyota has the highest, the electric highest. So, all right. Guess we can move on.
Thank you so much, John. Let's go to Georgia for another story about making things cleaner.
Well, the cool and exciting and good news, unlike my usual beat, is that two-sided solar panels that can track with the sun will produce more energy. And the nice thing is that the boost is going to be, well, right now they're trying to improve the overall energy collection, but we're talking about a 35% increase in more energy and reduce the average cost of electricity by 16%, which, as we all know, that's helpful for us. So, now, I personally am not big on solar panels. So I'm going to actually ask.
Oh
yeah.
I don't have any. I've never had to install them. I've only had to photograph them. I'm going to ask that.
Yeah, so I've got solar panels on my roof, and you can't really do tracking when you have roof mounts. But if you like, we had Tom Bodette on the show, and he had a large array out in the field. That'd be the perfect spot for this, where you can track. And he actually said that he had talked to his installer about that, and they were able to. If you have tracking, then that's just one more thing that could break, and it gets you an extra, just tracking alone 10 or 15%. So if you can afford it, if you could just install 10 or 15% more if you have the room, then you don't have to deal with the tracking. But in general, anything like this that makes it more efficient, that brings down the cost, that gives you more bang for your buck, is worth it. If he didn't have the room to install 10 or 15% more, he could have done tracking instead. And this idea of having two-sided and having some reflective property behind it, that's relatively cheap to add. And then the photons pass through twice, and you increase your efficiency. So all these kinds of little things are going to help we've seen the cost of solar over the last 15 years drop dramatically. It's been incredible how much it's dropped. And it's because of innovations like this that we're getting more efficient panels. And I'm just glad to see this keep marching forward.
I think
I got 2 words.
What? Give us your 2 words.
Flat roofs. I just can't say that enough. We have more than enough flat roofs in the United States and in the world to supply magnitudes more energy than we need.
We do.
That's true. It's getting it to everybody's hands. That's the problem.
But like you said about the price decrease, I was able to put 2/3 more panels on my house in South Carolina than it came with for the same price as the original array, because of the way it's been going down.
How many years between that, Casey?
2.
what?
Yes.
That's impressive.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
2 years
crazy.
just dropped that much. Wow.
Yeah, we installed our original ones in 2011, and then we got more in 2015. And in that time, we installed twice as many panels at half the cost.
Wow.
So, we went from 4 kilowatt to 12 total.
Well, and you probably got higher kilowatt panels too, right?
Yes.
Probably 30% higher panels from like 200, I'm guessing, to 300.
Right. Yeah, they were slightly bigger and more efficient.
Yeah. My first ones were 280s, and my second ones were 310s.
But I like the numbers, though, for the combination of double-sided panels and dual-axis tracking. But my question that they couldn't answer: how within reach is it comparatively from the single tracking to dual tracking? Because I think that's what's going to decide for consumers whether or not they're going to go for the full double. I don't mean
just like Tom Bodette, though, is unless you're space constrained, your installer is probably going to steer you away from tracking because of the maintenance and the failure rate, and it's just another thing in there. And they consume power to actually move.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they more than make up for it. But like you said, especially most people are just going to install it on their roof, and then tracking's not an option. And hopefully you have a south-facing roof, and that's great. But if you don't, you can still do east and west.
That's what I've got.
That's what I have too. Yeah, and it works great. Yep. In fact, you get more power in the morning and more in the evening if you have it on both sides, and that helps level out the duct curve.
It does. Yeah, so I was able to run 2 electric cars, the Volt and the S, and then when I swapped them out, I was able to run the Model X with a healthy commute and still have a negative balance. And just last month, my folks were running. They wiped out their gas bill for the water heater in the furnace with solar power. It's just phenomenal. And then the neighbors are running green because they're overproducing.
Right. Yeah. When you're overproducing, you're actually powering your neighbors' homes because it's not like it goes all the way back to some central distribution station. It just follows the path of least resistance. It's turning your meter backwards and theirs forward.
Yep.
So would these solar arrays be more municipal utility for big solar farm?
I think they would probably work best
Probably,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or a small
It's
site.
really, yeah, it's for larger installations, industrial installations, municipal installations, that kind of thing, where you start to see stuff with heavy tracking and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
For now, that technology isn't going to super impact the home solar thing, but anything that makes that heavier, that larger use scenario cheaper, more attractive is a very good thing, because obviously that's a huge source of that sucks up energy. Factories,
Right.
cities.
So
all that.
one of the offices back in Alberta, they have two sets of solar panels, right? One of them at an angle for the summer, and one of them mounted vertically for the winter. So if they had these double-sided panels, the vertically mounted ones, right, can gain a little bit more of that weak winter sun, because then
Yeah, the
it can
farther
bounce
north
off
you
that.
are, the better tracking would perform. Would it be more necessary? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, again, they don't have tracking. They just mounted two separate ones. Like they have a set of angled ones for the summer and vertical ones for winter. I mean, of course, they all work year
Right.
round. It's just at different efficiency rates. But yeah, the double-sided ones would work well for, especially the vertical mounted ones, right? Because it's just a concrete wall behind it.
That solar flower, what's that? A double or a triple tracker?
Sorry.
The one that looks like a flower and it unfurls and it tracks the sun across the sky. Is it a dual axis?
I'm
triple?
not familiar with that one.
Question mark shitting out of my head. I know what you're talking about, Casey, but I don't know.
It's at least dual tracking. Yeah.
Is it the solar flower?
I think that's what they call it. It looks like a flower.
Going to Google that.
It
Yeah,
looks
I
like
think
a big flower.
I think it tracks
Google
the sun
rays.
even at night.
Oh,
Points at China and
Yeah.
It flies away. It goes
Tracks
back.
It
the
gets the
full moon.
neutrinos as they pass through the Earth.
Oh yeah. Those neutrino things.
You're thinking of the model gets mounted to a plane. It's not quite as efficient as it follows the sun across the Earth.
no, but
I was like, is he thinking about one of those solar things that you see in a spaceship for Star Trek something?
Right. Mhm.
No, it's a circular array, and when it unfurls itself, it looks like a flower.
Oh.
yeah. It just it cleans itself.
Yeah, the smart flower.
Yeah.
Petal-shaped solar panel array follows the sun.
It's the same deal. As long as you're not space constrained, you can get more power out of a ground mount.
Now, did you want to see it, or
Yeah, sure.
let me
You asked.
load, please?
Please Skype.
Please load. Let me see.
Pray to the Skype
Yeah,
god.
it just says tracking,
Great
but
to
the
Skype guys.
website.
It's like, how do I share my screen once again?
Uh,
Oh, here we go.
3 dots down at the it was at the
Next to the heart in the chat box.
I don't know if you can see this. Smart flower.
Is it not? Well, let's.
Tony can put it in post.
I'm gonna make oh, there we go. Look at that. Uh-oh. It's very. This is the smart flower at night.
Nice.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. Thank you, solar.com.
The most interesting 3 minutes for our audio listeners ever.
Sorry, guys.
Uh-oh.
They have a smaller
There we
EV
go.
version for
Thank you very
specifically
much.
for charging your EV.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Just a smaller one.
Well, let's
right.
go on to our next story where we have a little bit of perhaps comeuppance. Patrick has the details.
Okay, yeah. So this one, Minnesota sues Exxon, Koch Industries, and the American Petroleum Institute for, quote, 30 years of a campaign of deception on climate. So this is awesome. So these guys have been lying to us for decades, and we talked about their PR campaigns in the past. And I want to stick to the script here because this is a lawsuit. So Minnesota is the latest in a growing list of local governments from San Francisco to Rhode Island that are hoping to hold the fossil fuel industry accountable for the climate crisis. They are accused of knowingly directing, conducting, and funding campaigns to deceive and defraud Minnesotans and Americans. As these various lawsuits have gone on, documents as old as 30 years old have been discovered that demonstrate that they knew that climate change was a real problem. Exxon's internal documents acknowledge that CO2 was increasing, that it was caused by burning fossil fuels, and that it would cause, quote, dramatic environmental effects before the year 2050. And yet they spent millions of dollars on campaigns to sow doubt in the science. So these PR campaigns said things like, "Who told you the Earth was warming, Chicken Little?" So Minnesota has itemized their costs that are related to this. The $614 million that they've spent on asthma treatments in 2014 alone, and the $165 million they spent on flood disaster relief in 2007. So their lawsuit is using slightly different techniques than some of the others that have been out there. So it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out. And we've talked about how these PR campaigns use the same sorts of underhanded techniques that the tobacco industry used. And while the tobacco industry had a massive lawsuit and had to pay the states a lot of money that went towards health and other awareness campaigns. So I would really like to see the same thing happen here and have the fossil fuel industry held accountable for all their deception.
Turn those unpriced externalities into priced externalities.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
But I mean, didn't we have evidence from Exxon? What is it, 1947? They had documents. Like, there's not even a computer on anybody's desk at this point, and they're telling us how bad it's going to be, and it's tracked. They were within what, 3% of 47?
Yeah, those internal documents have been leaked. They've been put out. They've been. I mean, it is incredibly damning. And
Yes.
I find it hard to believe that they have been taken to court multiple times. And the courts have said, well, it's not really up to us to decide.
Right.
But like Patrick said, and the thing is, a lot of these previous lawsuits were just, states, municipalities pointing their fingers and saying, but they knew. And the judges are like, well, but what are we supposed to do about this? But like Patrick said, Minnesota is saying, their wanton disregard for the facts and the fact that they intentionally buried their own studies incurred damages, and we are suing for damages. Now that's a completely different thing. You can sue for damages. Now the judges have to step up and they have to say whether or not Exxon and Koch are liable for the damages that they incurred.
And then, once it succeeds, you've got precedent, and everybody else comes
that
with the
succeeds. Exactly.
Well, this is why when you're going to do a court case, if you're going to do a court case, you really have to understand that you need two important pieces of things to have a successful argument. You need to have a clear person for whom what happened affected them. There has to be somebody with standing for this case to happen. And Minnesota is showing that they, as a state, they do have standing because these are the damages that they've paid out over the years. And Exxon themselves, with their 1979 document, shows that they knew of the problem. And the 1991 document for their information council, where they basically said, okay, here's how we're going to make sure they don't get us to regulate anything we're doing for the environment. So you do have a sign that there is a clear showing that they knew what was happening and they took steps to obfuscate any responsibility and any mitigation efforts being legislated. So this has way more of a chance of actually amounting to proper damages than just about anything else that's gone up before a judge. So a judge can hear your argument, but if you cannot clearly state, this occurred, these damages occurred to my client, this is what they would cost in something for the restitution, and here are the remedies we are looking for, you're probably not going to succeed in that case, because there is no such thing as settled law, but you can establish a precedent. And you can't have them, they can indict a ham sandwich, but they can't make the ham sandwich go to jail. So you have to think about all of that stuff.
Yeah, and certainly the oil industry has well-seasoned lawyers who know how to fight these sorts of cases, to tie them up, to drag it out. So it's going to be a long time before we know how this turns out.
Yeah.
Sadly, we know who's paying for all those lawyers.
Us.
We are,
Everybody going to the pump.
Yeah, everyone going to the pump and the subsidies that they get from our tax
Right,
dollars.
and everybody paying taxes. Right.
Yeah.
Basically everyone.
Everyone.
So even
Except
if you
for
don't pay them,
yeah.
So
paying.
if this succeeds, do we start seeing price externalities? Do we see carbon tax? How do they
Nobody
keep
knows
themselves
yet.
back in there if it succeeds?
at this point,
Nobody
I'd be happy if we just stopped subsidizing them. I mean, they
Yeah.
make billions of dollars a year. Why the hell do they even get a subsidy?
Mhm.
Very good question.
That's a good
You
point.
know the answer to that question, though.
We
That
do.
was
They have some politicians and lobbyists that
Because we pay for their lobbyists.
Yeah, they can always claim poverty even as they pocket billions, and it's the most amazing thing in the world.
Mhm.
Oh no, we can't subsidize electric cars, but they need that oil discovery money.
Well, let's talk about a way you can make a positive change. Tony has some details.
So what I want everyone to do, everyone in the United States,
Everyone? Wow.
yes, everyone in
demanding.
every single person, unless you're one of the Koch brothers, needs to contact your representative and tell them that you support the Moving Forward Act. And the Moving Forward Act, and I sent this to you guys, and I don't know if you had time to read the 2,300-page document, but
I read it twice.
okay, yeah, I figured. So
Right now,
basically,
Patrick means.
yeah. So like last week we talked about how what was it, Georgia? What was the name of the was that last week? Or was it Patrick? No, it was Patrick. It was just an anti-EV shield.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it was called?
Oh,
Dang
which
it!
one was
Sorry to
that?
put you on the spot.
Yeah.
But it was one of those that was funded by the petroleum industry and was made to sound flowery, but at the end it was really they were doing everything they could to crush EVs.
Right. It was like fuel freedom or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So this is the Moving Forward Act, and it really is moving forward. So it's not one of those flowery things. And so here's a few things that it addresses. The federal EV tax credit, it would increase the credit to $600,000 per manufacturer instead of the current $200,000. The EV tax credit would create new tax credit for buyers of used EVs. Currently, if you buy a used EV, you can't get the incentive. Expanding access to EVs to underserved communities. EV charging station rebate programs. Accessibilities at rest areas, signage, EV charging stations funded through the Highway Trust Fund. The Postal Service going full electric. The U.S. federal fleet going full electric. So, I mean, these are really good things that we've been promoting and things that we've been calling. And making your support is surprisingly easy, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So let's see. What you need to do is go to pluginamerica.org. That's pluginamerica.org, not com. So if you can see that right here. Now,
Plug in America.
Pluginamerica.org. Click on the magnifying glass in the middle of her forehead. And type in moving forward, and do a search for that, and you'll see right here, right up on top, support the Moving Forward Act. And all you have to do is put in your name, your email address, your city, your state, to it'll send this message, and then you click the take action. And this will send your support to your representative based on your city, state, and zip code. You need to do this. This is important.
Yes. Do that today, please.
Wait,
And
as soon as possible.
And I'm going to say that if you're one of those people like myself and you actually want to try and read some of it, there is a fact sheet, transportation.house.gov, and you can find the Moving Forward Act there. There is a 4-page, it's really three and a quarter pages that synopsizes what the Moving Forward Act is about. And if you can't go to plugin.org, you can always text ResistBot at 50409, and what you should say, you just send a simple text saying to your House member, you want to send it to your House member, you just tell it where, that you want them to support the Moving Forward Act. And it sends a fax for you. It'll send it to your House member and your senator if you want to. Very simple, very easy, very convenient.
Yeah,
Super
incentives like this really are effective, and I really like the idea that this one has a allowance for used vehicles. So the Oregon, we have 2 incentive programs here. One that's $2,500 for new vehicles, and then there's a second one that you can use on new or used if you're below a certain income level. So you can get up to $5,000 off a new vehicle if you're at a certain income level, and above that, well, you're going to get at least $2,500 off. And if you couple that with a federal incentive, now you're up to 10 or 12.5. So that'll really reduce the price of a vehicle if you can get $12,500 off.
Right.
It's huge. So please remember this. Go fill out the little form. Do that today. Thank you so much.
And don't be afraid to make phone calls either. Call them. Get their number. Call them.
Yeah, and the other thing, I don't want to keep beating this, but the little paste-in message that's there, those are fine, but it's always more effective if you write something yourself or edit that heavily and put your own message in there so that it doesn't look like 10,000 of the same emails came in all at once, so that it appears as though constituents have concerns about this item that's super important. Again, doing it is the first step. If you want to get fancy, read it and know what you're talking about. And then if you want to get really fancy, customize the message so it'll have a bigger impact on your representative.
And
Let's go to Casey.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
They look at all of these. They log all their phone calls, so it does make a difference. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now we're going to go back to Casey on another way of getting around more cleanly. Casey Green.
Back to the good news. So Georgia and Patrick are always getting on us about public transportation, right? So how about a Hyundai electric bus?
Awesome.
The minibus, like the ones you see in Africa. It's a 128 kilowatt hour battery pack, and it's got all the creature comforts. Hill start assist, heated and cooled seats for the driver, nice comfortable cabin for everybody else. I was hoping that somebody would have a picture. I guess it might have to be me.
No. Yeah. Oh, I'll get it. You talk.
Okay, perfect. And so, I mean, it's perfect because, like, you've got the large buses like the Proterra and BYD and everybody else.
Yeah.
But none of them were really touching these smaller buses, and you don't want to have too much capacity for the routes because that's real money right there. So if you can right size it, this vehicle will help fit in some of those gaps that they had before.
Yeah, the nice thing about an electric bus is you know the range and you can pick a route that fits that range. And having more options, like we just listed, there's larger buses, and now we have a smaller bus. That's more choices for those municipalities that are running buses. That's great.
Yep, and it's got all the safety, everything you could want as a buyer of these vehicles. You don't have to worry about anything going on with the battery. I mean, you would expect that as a buyer, but they call it out. They're like, hey, if there's any abnormality, we shut it down. And you got hill hold assist, so you don't have to worry about It's not as stressful on the driver as they say they are used to a standard transmission on a vehicle this size.
Yeah, I work on a multi-building campus, and we have a crappy old diesel shuttle that will run people between buildings, and I would love to see that thing replaced. And we already have a charging infrastructure, so
you guys make them.
Yeah, right, and that's why.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, and sometimes while the guy's waiting for someone to call, he'll sit in the parking lot and idle with either the heater or the air conditioner. And
I don't
he
blame
just
him
sits
though.
there
'Cause
and
it's
idles
hot,
in the parking lot.
cold.
Right.
Yeah.
This solves that because you can still run the heater or air conditioner and do it without polluting everybody who's just trying to get around on campus and going outside for a walk or trying to inhale. How dare you?
Yeah, just like we saw.
Yeah.
Just like we saw with that police department with the 6 Teslas. They're the Model 3 standard range. Were they standard range pluses or standard range regular?
Standard Range Plus.
Consider a plus.
So now all the cops sitting there waiting for a call to come in. He's on his computer doing his stuff. He's not just burning gasoline. And same with this the shuttle driver. He's not sitting there destroying the air quality on your campus, making your people sick. So they'll have to use the company insurance plan.
Yeah, and the employees are plugged in during business hours, and you plug this thing in at night.
Because they know the routes.
Oh yeah, you don't even have to have additional infrastructure that way. That's smart.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Well, let's go to another electric vehicle story. Let's go to John, who has a story about wireless charging. Because, the cord is just unmanageable. I can't deal with
the cord.
Well, I mean, hopefully this will become more widespread, and that previous story we're talking about, the bus driver sitting idly, will be a thing of the past because of this next story that we're talking about. So this will be a new test run done in Oslo. This project is taken on by Jaguar Land Rover. So they'll be providing the Jaguar I-Pace SUVs as a pilot project for to be run as taxis in Oslo. And the wireless chargers will be provided by Momentum Dynamics. So the idea is that they'll install these wireless chargers at taxi stands at the train stations, at taxi stands at hotels, anywhere where a taxi might be idling, waiting for passengers, right? So the idea is that this wireless charger is an inductive charging system. Will deliver up to 50 kilowatts of power in like 6 to 8 minute bursts. So basically, at the worst case scenario where a taxi is arriving at the train station, drops off the passenger and then picks up the next passenger, it's about they say 6 to 8 minutes for that exchange to happen. They'll still get enough charge. But of course, if they're just sitting there, then of course they'll keep charging. Presumably there'll be more than one, so that it's not just the lead car that's getting the top up. But the idea is that if they're sitting at a taxi stand, why not charge? And so just tying into that previous one, if the bus is just sitting there at the bus stop, in between its routes, right? Why not charge?
This is awesome because now instead of sitting there and burning fuel and causing pollution, it's sitting there and it's getting charged up so that it can then drive without emitting. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Totally flipped it on its head in a great way.
And it doesn't require the driver to get out of the car, turn off the car, get out and charge. Because right now, if they were to park and charge, I think Tesla you can still run the car, but some other vehicles you can't, right? You can't have the car running and charging at the same time. So and this is just a convenience factor too, right? And
this is the human factor too. Is if they don't need the charge, they're not gonna go because they had to go somewhere else, and now they get a long fare, and now they're stuck. And so now the customer hates the electric car because it got them stuck last time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is a good. Go ahead.
No. I mean, it's a great idea, John. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so 6 minutes at 50 kilowatt will get you 5 kilowatt hours, and that'll get you 20 miles, and that's like essentially adding no time because you were sitting there waiting for a pickup. So that's awesome.
Loading their luggage.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's the worst case scenario where you immediately drop someone off and pick someone up at the same time. So yeah.
Yeah. Which might happen, but again, this opportunity charging is super cool because the driver doesn't have to do anything, doesn't have to get out. And I made fun about like, oh, it's so hard to plug it in. But in this use scenario, it's a really good application of that technology.
Mhm.
And
So-
when you're talking airports and places, I know most major metropolitan airports have I don't know what you would call it, the taxi stall, the places
Mhm.
where the taxis
Mhm.
park, waiting for
stand, yeah.
someone, yeah, so you just put one in each, slot in the parking lot. They sit there and they fill up.
Sounds awesome.
And they don't lose their place in line.
right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Everything's good. Well, speaking of everything good, our final story of the night goes to Tony, who has some good news about a long distance charging one.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and
Don't.
oops, wait. No,
Okay.
I didn't
Load the
want to do
map.
that. I'm going to the map, baby. So here is a map of Electrify America's ultra-fast EV charging network, and they have completed their first cross-country route, and that is shown in blue. Then it goes from I forgot where. So Washington
Los
D.C. to Los
Angeles.
Angeles. So it either goes from Washington D.C. to Los Angeles or Los Angeles to Washington D.C. I forget which one. And then route number 2 is, you can see, is the southern corridor. It's going to go from Jacksonville, Florida to San Diego. Yeah, I know, right? Because Russell wants to go.
Never
get
to
get
Jacksonville.
never to Jacksonville. And so this Engadget article is talking about where they have the charging spots, and then there's an article in here. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. That there's a sentence that says Electrify America's primary goal has always been to help people forget about Dieselgate. Their second goal. No, okay, that's not Engadget. I made that part up. But let's face it,
The sentence
is-
they should have written.
that's what they should have written. Exactly. So Electrify America, if you go to their website, the quote is, Electrify America's primary goal has always been to advance electric vehicle adoption in the U.S., and that starts by instilling feelings of confidence and freedom in consumers when it comes to EV ownership. Somebody had to work really hard to write that sentence. But yes, of course, Electrify America is the settlement company or organization that came out of Dieselgate from Volkswagen. But regardless of how it was formed, they are actually doing great things. And one of them is this new coast-to-coast U.S. corridor. So, another option in addition to the Tesla supercharger network. And this is open to anyone with an EV that are driving. Oh, I should say they are about 70 miles apart.
Mhm. Yeah.
So depending on the range of your car, you should be able to drive half the 2, stop the third, keep going or whatever.
Mhm.
My only
Yeah,
critique
so
is that
I hope.
wish-
Go ahead, Casey.
My only critique is I wish that they offered more than one CHAdeMO stall per station. I mean, as a somebody who owns a Leaf, somebody who owns a Tesla, not everybody has CCS.
That's true.
Yeah, hopefully in the future they'll build that out.
Especially since right now their CHAdeMO is only tops out at 50, right?
That too. So it's
So
tiny
you
one.
kind of need more because it's the slower charger of the two.
Yeah. And look, we can both very legitimate criticisms. That said, sure is nice that it's there at all.
I agree.
Sure is nice that there are options that maybe don't work for everybody, but may work for some people. As we've said on this show in the past, that most people don't buy electric vehicles for cross-country trips, but the idea that you can open up those corridors for regional trips, for long trips that somebody wants to take, that's super awesome. That's cool. That's a step in the right direction in every way, even if it's not perfect.
Well, a good example is Charleston, South Carolina. It's great for a day trip if you're in anywhere in that range. But so far, the only people who service that are you got 3 standalone EVgo stations and Electrify America. Tesla's been coming soon for the last 6 years there. And so if you travel in and your car can take one of these stations, you can get out as a day trip. If not, then you have to go to one of the resort hotels where they're going to charge you an extra $40 a night to use their EV charger. So yeah, because you can't get back out based on the distance.
Yeah, I can't really blame them for not having a lot of CHAdeMO though. We really do need to converge on one standard, and having to just causes this problem of, well, how many do we have of each, and
it's extra costs.
Yeah, it increases their costs. So it would be really nice if the Nissan Ariya that's coming out in 2 weeks had the CCS instead of CHAdeMO. I doubt it will. Nissan's been pretty hardcore in the CHAdeMO camp. So
they could do both, like Porsche. Porsche has 2 CCSs.
That'd be interesting.
Or
Yeah,
at least Nissan come out with a conversion plug that could use CCS.
Right, that would be a good way to do it as well. That way, we can wean ourselves off of CHAdeMO. And CCS is clearly the winner in the U.S. That's what all vehicles being sold here after this year should support. And we have an adapter, then you don't abandon the CHAdeMO vehicles that are out there now. That would be a good way to do it. And I really hope that Electrify America has good reliability, because when I was driving around in my Leaf, the fast charging network that was available then was not that good. They had one station at a time. They were usually broke down, or it'd be iced, or there'd be someone else who was charging, but now they just left their vehicle, and I have no idea when they're going to be back. So there were many times where I had problems, and I always had a contingency plan, so I was never stranded. PlugShare is your friend, and there was one time where I went to someone's house because the place where I was planning on going, there was a line of 4 cars there, and I didn't want to wait. So and I didn't need to charge that much, so just a half hour at level 2 was enough to get me to the next stop. And it was cool that this person had put their home on this network to allow people to use. And he was like, "Yeah, I signed up for this. I didn't think anybody'd ever use it, but yeah, let me move my car for you." And we chatted for a while, and it was cool. Yeah.
You show up with a 6-pack.
Yeah. One thing I do want to add with this is every review I've heard of their network says that their readers, both the credit card readers and the RFID readers for their own network, are pretty terrible. So what is best is if you download their app to your phone, and that works much more reliably, like in the high 9s. Yeah. Not 9%, but like 9.9999. Yeah.
And like Russell said, it's not just about cross country driving. Because I've harped on that before. I'm like, well, how many times does the average person drive from Washington? You're not the average person. How many times does the average? One data point does not make an average. But here in Chicago, a lot of people do take vacations into Wisconsin or Michigan, and whatever. And yeah, I can look at the map of Electrify America, and I can see that there are stations that go up into Wisconsin or over into Michigan, so it's not even the coast to coast, like Russell said. It's just being able to travel more than, 70, 140, 210 miles away from home and not worry about being stranded.
Yep.
Go ahead, Georgia.
Oh, no, I'm just agreeing.
Okay. You just looked like you had something to say. I was like, So I'm going to call it a night there, because that was a lot of topics. Let's do some shout outs and go home. And Georgia McKenzie, I'm going right back to you for the first shout out of the night.
Shout out to the essential workers. Shout out to my mask wearing friends and family and all you good people out there. And sorry we're on lockdown again.
Yeah.
I actually just got the notice. It's like, my county is now on lockdown.
Did I mention that San Diego's not one of the 19 affected counties?
You know what, Russell?
I know, right, guys? I'm shocked I only got that. I figured I'd get something else, but cheers. Yeah. John B., You got any
Uh,
shout outs, Mr. President?
No, just again, happy Canada Day and happy Independence Day, right? It's this week too.
Absolutely.
Enjoy responsibly, and now that doesn't just result. Now that's not just
Without
alcohol consumption.
fireworks.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Oh, wait, one quick shout out. Shout out to all my cousins in Canada.
Aw.
We
I'm
were
sorry.
expecting a box with holes in it.
Rewind to the beginning if you need some more information.
I've seen that Canadian Customs show. I am not going to try that, okay? Because I can't even imagine.
Look, I can fold it pretty
no,
small.
I don't want to go through that.
No,
You don't want to be in a box that blow up.
I've seen those Mounties beat up some dudes, so I'd rather not cross them.
So they're very polite about it, but they're still. Yeah.
polite but stern.
You know the law, eh?
Sorry about
polite,
this, eh?
but stern. Let's go to
Sorry about
Patrick
this.
Connor.
All right. So when you're celebrating, whether it's today or on the 4th, be safe. Numbers are going up here in America, so this is not the day to go have a barbecue with all your neighborhood and just have beer and give hugs and shake hands. Be smart, be safe. I'm with the Oregon Electric Vehicle Association. You can find us at oeva.org, and we're on the social medias. And I also occasionally blog at carswithcords.net. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Connor, for your contributions here. And of course, Patrick's contributions in doing our Twitter feed and our Facebook news feed. Thank you for that, sir.
Sure.
Mr. Casey Green.
I would like to ask you guys to take a look at my Tesla firmware deep dive, as well as I've got a couple of new supercharger reviews to go in there as well. Because I stopped at 2 that I hadn't visited during this endeavor. Like I said, it burnt a lot of kilowatt hours and put hundreds of miles in the car. And I hope you'll find it interesting. You'll find that at youtube.com/Casey Green. That's KACEYGREEN.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. Mr. Coughlin.
I would like to say to you, if you've watched the show to this point, please give us a thumbs up in YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed already, press that subscribe button. That helps us out, and it costs you nothing. So please do that, and that would really be appreciated. Thank you.
Turn it gray.
And no plug.
No plug. That was my plug. Yep.
That is Mark Coughlin right there. Well, Tony Schaefer, bring us home, baby.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of subscribing, 2 people unsubscribed to our channel, and they were losers anyway. So we're not going to miss them at all.
Do you know who they were? Because
out them on the show, Tony.
No, no, I have no idea who it is. I am going to give a shout out to Sean Mitchell, who is our most recent subscriber. So I haven't been doing recent subscriber shout outs recently. So shout out to Sean. Thanks for taking the time to give us a like. I really do appreciate it.
Isn't Sean Mitchell the guy that does all things EV? I wonder if that's...
He is. He very much is. I wasn't going to out him in that way, but
sorry.
but yes, it is that Sean Mitchell.
Yeah.
I also want to say that. Yeah, if you do want to read all the news that we're reading, check us out online. Like Russell said, Patrick feeds our Twitter and Facebook. If you have TikTok, delete that shit right now. If you, I just wish I could deliver lines without laughing at my own jokes.
So much anger because you can't dance.
That was for the Chinese spying.
Wow.
There have been some security
I
issues.
tried. If you use Flipboard as a news aggravator, thank you, aggregator, like I do, check out the What Drives Us magazine. I'm done. Russell, bring us home.
That's it. Thank you, Tony Schaefer, former co-host of What Drives. Not at all. Well, let's do some more plugs here. As always, I want to thank Michael Mannering for his amazing theme music. Visit him at manthing.com. And this Friday, for one day only, from midnight until midnight, that's Friday, July 3rd, you can go to Bandcamp, put Michael Mannering in, and everything you buy, all the money goes to Michael. Okay?
Yes.
He's a hardworking guy. He's not rich. Buy a song, buy an album. Support the show, support the people that support this show. We appreciate that very much. And for your money, you're going to get really cool music.
Yeah.
His new album, Small Moments, is what you can look for, but anything is great. Always want to say, again, .com/what drives us. Go there, hit subscribe, hit notify. The subscribe is the important part. It's a great way to support the show for free. You can visit patreon.com/what drives the show. You can support the show there directly for as little as $1 a month. Do I have to do the math? $1 a month. Patreon.com/what drives the show. Got $1. We could use $1. Thank you.
For $12, you get these studs right here. Come on. You want
And
it.
some eye candy. Georgia the eye candy. That's like
I was just anything I say here is going to ruin what Georgia just said. So
Georgia's never watched the show.
She's just
I'm on the show.
Never watched the show.
Never watched it.
Yeah. See, sounds like Danny Cooper. Which you didn't get, Georgia. I'm sorry, but other people
I
might.
watched old TV.
Thank
Old
you.
TV.
Oh, Danny, the old man. Yes.
Yes. Oh, God, nothing. Wow. I'm just lost. So all I'm going to say is, as always, we do the show for you. Thank you. If you download the show, listen to it on podcast or watch the show, thanks so very much. We appreciate that. Tune in next week and find out what drives us. That's the cue for music. Hey, there's the music. There's Michael. Have a safe Canada Day and July 4th, everybody. We'll see you next week.
July 4th.
Celebrate responsibly.
Happy 4th.
Stay safe.